Is Bitcoin risky? Well, in 2023, Bitcoin might just be the safest, least risky asset you can store your wealth in.
This is going to zero too. Euros are going to zero. The yen's going to zero. The Chinese currency is going to zero. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin.
Now, if that sounds shocking to you, consider this. Have you ever stopped to think about the many risks that apply to the money in your wallet or the cash in your bank account?
They'll accuse the U.S. government of making money out of thin air. Maybe we do, but we're the U.S. government.
Most people don't. But with economic turmoil unfolding all around the world, it's more important than ever to think carefully about where you're putting your savings and to understand all the risks.
A 42-year-old man armed has taken 6 people hostage for more than 7 hours to try and access his own money. Banks across Lebanon have frozen customers' access to their savings for 3 years as the nation battles an economic crisis.
A lot has happened in the past 3 years, from lockdowns, recessions, extreme inflation, bank failures, and even war. These have a massive negative impact on your money and expose you to a whole bunch of risks that you're probably not even aware of. In this video, we discuss 4 key reasons why Bitcoin is actually a lot less risky than you may think, especially when compared to our existing government currency. Let's get into it.
Government currency, otherwise known as fiat currency, has a very poor track record. You may be shocked to learn that the lifespan of a fiat currency is on average only 27 years. That is a remarkably short amount of time. And this is because governments and politicians can never resist the temptation to simply print more currency to solve whatever problems they face. The US government printed over $6 trillion out of thin air in the past 2 years alone, and most other countries have followed suit to varying degrees.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money?
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
The result of this excessive money printing is inflation or rising prices. Each time you go to the store and spend more to get the same groceries, that is inflation at work. Although you're seeing a higher price on the label, what's actually happening under the hood is that the value of your currency is decreasing. As more and more currency is printed, inflation increasingly robs you of your buying power, until eventually the currency becomes pretty much worthless. You can imagine the devastating impact on your wealth over time if you were to store it in your local currency. Even the US dollar, the world's strongest currency, has lost over 99.5% of its value. Every other currency has done worse, often much, much worse, and this is why millionaires and billionaires hold very little cash. As a proportion of their net worth, they keep only a tiny percentage in currencies, because fiat currencies can simply not be trusted to store wealth.
So how does Bitcoin address inflation risk? Bitcoin has a fixed supply. There will only ever be a maximum of 21 million Bitcoin, and no one can make more of it. No one can change the rules of the system to suit themselves at the expense of others. This means that when you choose to store your wealth in Bitcoin, your ownership of Bitcoin as a percentage of the total Bitcoin available never changes. And as the Bitcoin ecosystem grows and becomes more and more valuable, so too does your Bitcoin investment. So is Bitcoin risky? Well, your local fiat currency is 100% guaranteed to lose value over time. Whether you're experiencing 5% inflation or over 100% inflation like Argentina, you are certain to lose wealth by saving in your local government currency. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has produced the best returns of the past 14 years by a huge margin. No one has ever lost money holding Bitcoin for 5 years or more. And if we had a choice between guaranteed loss on the one hand and the massive growth potential of a super scarce asset on the other, it's not a tough decision to make.
Leaving your money in a bank account means that you are trusting a third party to act responsibly, ethically, and to secure your money better than you can. More and more often, however, these financial institutions are losing their clients' money due to reckless banking practices and difficult economic times. In only the first half of 2023, we've seen the failure of several notable banks in the US, as well as the second largest bank in Switzerland.
It is the second largest bank failure in American history and the third mid-sized bank to go under in less than 2 months.
Regulators today abruptly closed Signature Bank.
Silvergate is shutting down.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank is causing...
Now, whilst it's true that most bank deposits are insured, insurance only covers deposits up to a certain limit, and clients who've had funds in excess of these limits have permanently lost their money.
President, what do you know right now about why this happened? And can you assure Americans that there won't be a ripple effect?
Do you expect other banks to fail, Mr. President?
Should all depositors be protected at all banks?
So how does Bitcoin stack up? Well, Bitcoin was designed to have zero reliance on any third party. Bitcoin is a global decentralized financial system that operates independent of any country, government, company, or any other third party.
You know, if I run a country in a bad fashion, in a poor fashion, and my citizens have no choice, if they can't leave, they can't take their property with them, they have to use my bank and they have to use my currency, that's a pretty awful situation, and I have a lot of power, and I might abuse that power. But when the citizens of the country have an option, they can put their money in a bank in cyberspace outside of my control, and they can leave the country with their money, then maybe I'm going to be a bit more thoughtful and maybe a bit more humble in my political aspirations, and I will treat them with respect. And so I think Bitcoin is a balance of power. It's a check and a balance on the unmitigated power of a politician.
With Bitcoin, there simply is no third-party risk if you take self-custody of your Bitcoin. Your wealth is independent of the actions of others, and this is a groundbreaking concept. By the way, check out this video if you'd like to learn how to self-custody your Bitcoin. So is Bitcoin risky? Well, when it comes to money, trusting a third party with your wealth over the long run is seldom a good idea. With Bitcoin, there is simply no need to take this unnecessary risk, when you can take self-custody of your own Bitcoin with ease.
Relying on your government money to be completely neutral is a tough ask. Using our local currency means that we are at the mercy of our local laws and regulations, and in some cases, these laws are not in our best interests.
We must protect the position of the American dollar as a pillar of monetary stability around the world. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Banks commonly reject transactions which don't meet their list of requirements. For example, many banks no longer interact with Russia due to political reasons. So if you've got family in Russia who have been relying on your financial support, this becomes a very serious problem for you. Another recent example of this is the Canadian Freedom Convoy. In 2022, thousands of peaceful protesters stood up against authoritarian political policies in Canada. How did the government respond? They instructed the banks to freeze the bank accounts of protesters in an attempt to strong-arm and censor these freedom fighters. Not long after, however, people started donating Bitcoin to the cause in order to bypass the banking system and avoid the risk of censorship. So is Bitcoin risky? Politics, red tape, unfair regulations. Bitcoin doesn't care. You can send it to anyone, anywhere, at any time, free of censorship or interference. No one can freeze your account or separate you from your money. And this makes Bitcoin the ultimate freedom money.
The reality is that owning government currency comes with certain strings attached. If you play by the rules, your risk decreases. But step outside of those boundaries and you're going to encounter problems. Governments do not take kindly to citizens sending large amounts of money out the country, even if the transaction is completely legal and justified. Try crossing a border or getting through airport security with a briefcase full of cash. You won't get very far, and it's highly likely your money will be seized indefinitely. Storing a sizable amount of wealth in fiat currency therefore essentially confines you to your geographic region. And this is a disaster for people who are forced to flee their country due to political instability or war, for example. In 2022, a Ukrainian man fled his home just as war was breaking out in the Ukraine. Thanks to Bitcoin, he managed to escape across the border to Poland with 40% of his life savings intact. And there are many other stories just like this. Bitcoin grants you the ability to cross any border and move anywhere in the world with your wealth intact, because no one can see it, no one can seize it. And there's no other asset class that gives you this degree of control and flexibility over your own wealth. So is Bitcoin risky? Well, if you've made it to this point in the video, you're probably capable of making that assessment for yourself.
Bitcoin is the ultimate tool to protect your hard-earned savings. With the chaos unfolding in the world today, whether it's dirty politics, economic collapse, or war, Bitcoin gives each and every one of us the ability to protect the fruits of our labor, our private property, our wealth. More than any other investment out there, it offers the greatest chance of preserving our wealth over time and into the future. Now, if you're a new investor, you need to check out this video to learn the best strategy to follow when buying Bitcoin. See you there.